Well, hello everyone, and thank you for coming to another 10 Golden Rules Internet Marketing for Law Firm webinar. Today we're going to talk about web design, and I'm going to get right into it here. And we've got two awesome panelists you'll meet in just 1 minute. So, do that. My name is Jay Berkowitz, and today we're going to talk about websites, landing pages, and conversion. And I just wanted to start out with a couple thoughts. The first thought is, this stuff works. I've seen it over and over and over, and I've been doing website stuff for about 20 years. When you go from the old website to the new website, you get a number of tremendous results. Now, this was a new website we launched about a year ago, and the goal conversions are awesome. We went from 7% conversions. A conversion is someone either filling out a form on the website, making a phone call from the website, we track those, or doing a chat. The conversions went from 7.65 to 25%. That's a 200% improvement. People spent longer on the site. They looked at more pages. The bounce rate went down, so that the percentage of people who bounced off the site without looking at a second page, that's the bounce rate. And the goal completion percentage, dramatic improvement as well. And I've seen this over and over and over and over and over. Sometimes just refreshing your site, even changing some images and changing some navigation, some copy will have a dramatic improvement. And we're also going to spend some time today on landing pages. And landing pages, generally we use the term to talk about pay-per-click landing pages. So paid Google ads, paid Facebook ads, coming to a specific page where you can direct that click. We also do landing page testing in website design and search engine optimization, but in this instance, these are a couple pages. Here's the before, here's the after, and we see we went from 1.187% conversion. Again, people filling out the form, making a call or doing a chat, to 8% conversion. And then we did a lot of testing, and Chelsey, who you'll meet in a minute, did these beautiful new designs. And you see that we tweaked things, like we added orange call to action buttons, and we made some of these buttons live. And she'll talk about how we do some of that testing. We went from 9% to 13%. So we call it the A/B testing. In this case, B beat A, and then C beat D, and then D beat C, and then E beat C. So we're constantly evolving, constantly testing, and constantly improving. And so we'll talk a lot about how to get that done today. One thing that I thought was kind of interesting was we have three presenters today, and you're going to meet, as I mentioned, Chelsey Maas, who's our creative director at our partner agency, Snap Agency, and our creative director for 10 Golden Rules, and Scalice, who Nicholas worked for us at 10 Golden Rules and is an awesome guy. And he now does full-time landing page design. So the interesting thing for me was when I prepared my slides, and I'm going to do a quick introduction, and then I saw Chelsey's slides and Nicholas' slides. We almost all had three very consistent themes. So the first theme I call KISS. Keep it simple, someone. you know what I mean. Web design has to be simple, and I'll talk more about that, as will Chelsey and as will Nicholas. You need a call to action. You need to make it obvious to people what you want them to do, and that needs to be prominent. And you need to focus them on exactly which call to action you want. Finally, a lot of testing and tweaking. And these three themes were consistent throughout all three presentations. So without further ado, a little bit about me, and then we'll get into the presentation content, and you'll meet Chelsey and Nicholas. So my background, I come from Winnipeg, Canada, one of the most beautiful but coldest places on earth. And my wife and I and our dog Parker, we moved to Florida, and we've been down here for about 18 years. I started my career, I worked on some amazing brands. I worked on the Coca-Cola brand, and it was a fascinating brand to work on because it had been marketed for over 100 years, and trying to come up with something new was a real challenge. I also got into technology really early, working with Sprint. getting our customers their first emails, getting our business customers their first websites. And I also worked for both the ad agency, and I was a director of marketing for McDonald's restaurants. And we sold some of the most delicious, high-fat foods in the world, fantastic foods. I went directly from selling Big Macs and French fries to working at ediets.com. And eDiets was one of the .com startups that made it through the 2000 .com bust. And I had this incredible experience where we had over 100,000 people a day coming to our website. And we were always testing. Every single week we had a major test in place. And so I got this unbelievable, I called it my little lab experiment of seeing which banners got clicks, which different web designs and landing pages worked, which offers worked, which funnels worked, which e-newsletter signups worked. And I got this incredible experience of 100,000 people a day coming into my own personal test lab. And we had tremendous success. We grew eDiets from $2 million to $60 million in revenue. And I was asked to speak at the Direct Marketing Association, and I wrote a presentation called The 10 Golden Rules of Online Marketing. And at that presentation, a bunch of people asked me if I do consulting. And so I started my business, 10 Golden Rules, off of the presentation, 10 Golden Rules. I've spoken at several major events around the world. My new book, Internet Marketing for Law Firms, is going to come out this year in 2021, and it'll be my 6th book myself. We're in collaboration. I speak at some of the top lawyer marketing and legal events around the world, and we really focus on helping law firms with their internet marketing at my company, 10 Golden Rules. Our partner agency, Snap Agency, this is the last time we were all together, and this is actually a pre-COVID photo. And you'll meet Chelsey, our creative director. And as I said, we focus on helping law firms all around the country, different, any kind of law firm with their internet marketing. And the thing I'm most proud of is when we get a hockey stick. Of course, I'm a Canadian, and what a hockey stick is in business terms and in website terms is when we see the trend here of both visitors to the site and also leads, in this case, calls, forums, and chats, going from 20 or 30 leads a month up to 200 and 300 leads a month. So without further ado, let's learn about optimizing your website for maximum conversion and leads. And the first overall strategy, I love this book, and it's a classic, and it's over 10 years old. But if you, even from the design of the book, don't make me think, and this button, if this was a website, it's super obvious, right? Like, I want you to click this orange button with a super clickable looking. So this is a great strategy for your web designs. Make it easy for people to figure out what it is you want them to do. And I love this book, several themes in there, like omit needless words. And Steve's design kind of in the book talks about web design. You think people are going to read the top and they're going to read the left column, then the middle column, the right column, but the way people navigate the web is sort of all over the place. So a great book, and one of my first references. My second overall theme on web design is don't design for the HIPPO. And the HIPPO, my friend Avinash Kaushik, who's Google's analytics evangelist, said the HIPPO is the highest paid person's opinion. And I hear this all the time when we're doing website projects. And the partner in the law firm or the biggest business card in the room will say, well, you don't need a lot of copy. I never read the long copy. Nobody reads the copy. Unfortunately, that's not true, because Google's robots read the copy, and there's 10 or 20 or 30% of people who read the copy. Margie, our old vice president, used to know all this information about clients. Sometimes she knew more than the client knew about themselves. And we'd be driving back from a meeting. I'd say, where did you learn all that? She'd say, well, I read the website. But more importantly, you need copy on the website for search engine optimization. So lots of words are really, really important, and still an important factor in web design. The next piece is responsive design. You need to design the websites so that they work both on a desktop and an iPad or a tablet configuration and on a cell phone. And Chelsey will have a lot of more expert design tips, and Nicholas will talk about this as well. But one of the mistakes we make is web traffic is now up to like 50% of the traffic is coming from mobile, either a tablet or a cell phone. So it's super important that you keep that in mind. And in some instances, 60 or 70% of your traffic is going to the cell phone. So you've got to design with that in mind. The new design all have what I call hero images. And again, Chelsey will speak to this, but on our website, you see there's these big, super amazing photo images. And it's very important that you've got great hero images. That's really the number one thing. So don't skimp out on your photography for your website. Super important in terms of the end design. And then, as I mentioned a minute ago, design for mobile. So you got to make sure that your website works in a mobile environment, because 60 or 70 people are going to be seeing it like this. One little tip, these three little bars are called the hamburger. And it's because it like looks like a hamburger. And that's how people navigate a mobile website. And a new sort of way we think about websites is they have a long scroll to them. So you see, this is how it would look on either a desktop or on a cell phone. But everybody knows how to scroll a website now. And so the bounce rate is less important. Remember, I mentioned earlier, a bounce is how many people leave the website without looking at a second page. But a lot of times you're going to have a lot of information on that first page and a lot of ability to scroll and get the information. Some of the core design principles, and there's a lot of more sophisticated stuff you're going to learn from our panelists today, but still very important, I believe, are the conventions that people expect, such as the logo appearing in the top left. The 3-second rule. We used to call it the 8-second rule. Your website had to download within 8 seconds or people would leave in the old dial-up days. But there's also a new rule, which is your website better download super fast. But you also have to communicate who you are and what you do within 3 seconds or people leave the website. Women are smarter or faster than men. They'll leave in like 2 to 3 seconds, men in 3 to 4 seconds. So you need a clear slogan, who you are and what you do. The images have to be great and convey what you do. And those key headlines or that key copy has to be super precise and super clear. You still want navigation on the top of your website or the hamburger, as I mentioned, in mobile. And super important that you have a phone number or call to action in the top right. Again, don't break these rules. These are things like a door handle always turns to the right. If the door handle doesn't turn to the right, sometimes you do that timing pattern and you turn it to the left and you stumble into the door because the door handle didn't turn. You want to always follow these rules because 90% of consumers, if they're looking for a phone number, that's where they're looking for it. And if you're a law firm or professional services, you're going to get about 24% conversion on phone calls. So you want a lot of focus on the phone number, on phone calls. Number 2, you want to add chat to the website. We'll talk about that. And number 3, you can have the form available on the website. I touch on chat a few different times. When we add the chat function to a website, we always see a 10 to 30% improvement in the overall number of leads. And I have a personal theory on this. 4 or 5 years ago, when you did a chat, it didn't work very well. There was no one there. Now, as a consumer, when you do a chat, it generally works really well. The person's there, they answer your questions. But the value of the chat is if someone's, like, let's say they're working from home, their kids are homeschooling, they're not going to pick up the phone. They're not going to fill out your form. They don't want to get emails. They don't want to get spam. They might be inquiring for somebody else. Maybe their aunt had a car accident. Chat allows them to answer their questions without calling and without filling out a form. And so there's another percentage of people that you can convert. You definitely have chat, and there's a couple professional services we recommend. The UVP, 10 golden rules. Golden rule number 3 is to create a UVP, a unique value proposition. Something compelling, something free on the website that gets people to take an action. Now, for most law firm and professional services websites, we offer the free consultation. So we want to focus people on picking up the phone and calling. But for 10 golden rules, we did some research and heat mapping that Chelsey will talk a little bit about. And we saw that a large number of people, like 30 or 40% of people, were going to the 10 golden rules page to learn what the 10 golden rules are. Well, golden rule number 3, create a UVP, something free to engage people at a high percentage level with your content, right? So if people download this, you can either capture their email, or in this case, we made it totally free. And then we can do remarketing and ask them if they, hey, you downloaded our ebook. Do you want to come to our webinar, for example? Last thing, a little bit technical, you want to have a regular sitemap on your site, so a link to sitemap, and you want to have an XML sitemap, which is a more technical thing, but you want to basically upload your website through Webmaster Tools, or what Google calls Search Console, to your website. So, quick conclusion on my section. Number 1, don't make me think. I also called it KISS. Keep it simple, someone, right? When you're doing your web design, make it super easy for people to know, hey, call us if for a free consultation, because you want those phone calls. And if they don't want to call, maybe the chat button pops up after 7 or 8 seconds. And there's also a form on the page if that's their preferred way of contacting you. Don't follow the HIPPO's decision making. And if you're the HIPPO, the highest paid person's opinion, trust me, people do watch videos. People do read long content. People do use the chat. So just because you don't ever watch videos on a website, 20 to 30% of people, when they go to a website, they like to watch videos. And a huge percentage of people like to use chat and texting today. So make that available to those younger consumers, even if you as the HIPPO wouldn't ever text with a company. And finally, lots of testing and tweaking. You saw how powerful it is to bring in a new website. The conversion numbers went from 7% to 25% on that first website example I showed you. And on the landing page, we went from like 2% conversions to 13% conversions with variation E. So we did A/B testing, and we got 9% conversions. And then we tested variation C. It beat variation B. We tested D. It beat E. It beat C, and E beat D. And variation E was getting 13% conversions. And now we're doing yet another test of those landing pages. So at this point, I'm just going to do 2 things. One, I'm going to see if you have any questions for my section, and you can put questions in the chat. And the second thing, I'm going to put a link to my Calendly. If you have any questions that you want to take offline, and if you'd like me to look at your website or look at your internet marketing, I'd be happy to set up a consultation session. And all you have to do is click the link I'm going to put in the chat here. And if I just do that, it should be in the chat. And then you should be able to set up a one-on-one meeting with me. So if there's any questions for me, go ahead and put them in the chat right now. And I'm going to... Oh, there's one in the Q&A. Sorry, it's a little funky. There, you got a question. Okay, great. Okay, so first question. Hero images are just background images that are not distracting. Hero images, and Chelsey will speak more eloquently about this, but generally websites today have a big, beautiful image right on the top. And yeah, so they're generally, they shouldn't be distracting, but they should be communicative. Like they should say, hey, we do internet marketing, or we're a law firm, we focus on car accidents. So they should be part of that 3-second rule, that they communicate who you are and what you do super clearly. Thanks for that, Sarah. Should I try to mobile optimize my website myself or delegate it to someone on my staff? Maria, mobile optimization is really something for a web developer, and hopefully your website is nice and clean and easy for Google to read. There's actually a Google mobile test. If you just Google mobile test, you can get a test of your website, and Google will tell you if the mobile website has any issues, such as speed or any page loading issues, and does the page render properly in mobile. So that'd be a good place to start. Google also has a speed test, a free speed test, and it'll give you a score for your desktop and your mobile site. And if the mobile site's slow or doesn't render properly, again, you want to deal with a professional for that. All right, so let me get into, I also want to see the chat. Sorry, I'm just navigating through the GoToMeeting link here. Okay. Oh, great. We got a couple more questions. What color schemes would you suggest? What are great colors today? Matter of fact, I'm going to hold that one, Safia or Safia. I apologize, because Chelsey's a way better person to answer that. What colors are appealing to the eyes? Customers complain about color schemes. That's definitely part of Chelsey's presentation, and if it's not, she'll answer it for us. So with that, I'm just going to introduce Chelsey, and then I will stick around, and we will all answer questions at the end. So I want to do that, and I want to do that. All right. So with that, I'm excited to introduce Chelsey. She's our creative director, as I mentioned, for our sister agency, Snap Agency. And she's also the creative director by default for 10 Golden Rules. And there's a lot of valuable facts in her bio about usability and design and cutting edge behavior. But I wanted to say 3 simple things. She does beautiful designs, and they work. And I've worked with over 100 designers in my career. And there's 2 kinds of designers. There's ones that want to win awards, and there's ones that win awards, but their stuff really works. They look at the numbers, they care about the numbers, and you'll get it from Chelsey that her stuff, A, works, and B, it works because she knows about usability and design, and she looks at the numbers and does a lot of testing. And very nice for me. She's a pleasure to work with. She's got a great personality. And with that, I'll turn it over to Chelsey. So I'm going to stop sharing, and you're going to share, right, Chelsey?
Oh, I am. Okay. I did not have it set up. 1 second. Yes.
I could do it, but then you have to tell me to click.
No, that's fine. Okay. Can everyone see my screen? I guess that's a silly question to ask on a webinar. Okay, so I will start out with a quote. As you know, a lot of the webinars that I watch always have a quote, an inspiring quote to just kick it off. So my quote is, "Every aspect of marketing is entirely useless unless it produces conversions." So as Jay said in my intro slide, thanks for the introduction, Jay, I really truly believe that design is just design, and it needs to have some sort of user experience knowledge behind it in order to make it fully workable and really successful. So we as designers can create anything beautiful. You want a website? Great. If it's just a beautiful website, fantastic. But if you want it to work and actually create conversions, there is some tips and tricks and best practices that we need to follow in order for that to happen. So with that, I will jump in. So I have 3 topics of conversation today, conversion focused. The first one is call to action 101. So I prepared a few different things to look at not only the button itself. So when Jay mentioned a call to action earlier, or a CTA, a lot of people think of just the button. I'm going to talk more about just the overall call to action section on how to get users to that section and focus their eyes. Second point I'll make is the ease of use. So everyone wants easy using UX. Everyone asks for that. All clients do. So I have a few tips and tricks on how to approach that subject and truly make your website easy to use for your audience, not just an easy to use website, but something for your business and your audience. The third is tracking. So my favorite topic conversation is heat mapping. So we'll talk through some examples of how I use heat mapping and my team uses heat mapping to really understand and test the hypothesis that we put out in the design phase to then make some decisions on how to iterate. Jay previously mentioned some of the iterations that we've done in some landing pages and other websites. We learn very quickly if something is working or not, which is why we get to the A test B, test C, test D scenario. So I'll walk you through some of that as well. So first, CTA 101. So generally, because the internet is saturated with all sorts of websites and brands, and there's about 6.5 billion brands in the world. So out of all of that, how do you stand out? Well, we want to create a sense of urgency with all of our call to actions when we're having a user on our site, but we want to avoid bullying. And what I mean by that is twofold. The first is, you probably heard of it as confirm shaming, but I also like to call it the please don't go pop up. Now, this is really used if you are trying to get someone to interact with your site and they're just not, and then you either have a timer or a cursor dependent trigger that really triggers something that says, please don't go, which is great. That's an exit intent in action. The problem with this is a lot of brands trying to set themselves apart by using negative, almost bully-like tactics. So for example, on the left side of the screen here, you have TurboTax, and if you opted out of their email notifications, you got this message. So first Brad and Angelina, and now us. So that is more of a funny, trendy type of a quote. The problem is the second one is, let's take a step back and really think about this. So immediately you're putting a negative, like it's negative for the user to do this action. And yes, we don't want them to do that in the end, but we also don't want to bully them into thinking that it was wrong for them as a person. We don't know them necessarily. So that is a negative impression on your brand because you're saying, no, don't do this. Really don't think about it. Like, you need us. Versus having an encouragement type of a tactic, which I'll talk about in a second. The second one is manipulating. So down here, you'll see when you're signing up for something, this is it happens a lot when you have, like if you load a page, if it's a first-time user, they'll get a pop-up that you encourage for something. Similar to Jay's example of the pop-up of the download ebook, what we did right in that scenario is we didn't bully them. And what I mean by that is if you look where I circled, it says, no thanks, I don't need to work out. Similar vein with the left side is that you have a negative impression of that person. So they have a negative body image saying, I don't need to work out, therefore I don't need this total body makeover. So those are two examples of bullying that I think you should avoid. Now, how to avoid those is to create a benefit-oriented call to action. So by offering an incentive like the free ebook that Jay mentioned for the 10 Golden Rules website, you increase the likelihood of a conversion by 328%. So using those types of intent pop-ups to have a download or an asset that's beneficial to the user is fantastic. But avoiding bullying and making the user feel shame is what we want to avoid. So we want to use verbs to prompt the action. So use words like get now or get started or something that gets them excited, and that's more so a verb. We want to place the content, the phrasing of that close together. So here with Shopify, they have start your free 14-day trial today. So it gets you excited. They use an exclamation point, have the word start. But they also place it very closely together with that get started call to action. So you see the arrows pointing to that subheader as well as the actual action itself. Third, utilizing unique values to encourage. So e.g., if the UVP of your brand is that you are trusted by 175,000 store owners, that is a huge stat that you can use to your benefit to uplift that call to action. And then finally is using clickability cues in mind when styling. What is a clickability cue, you ask? A clickability cue is something that signifies to the user that there's something behind it. Either it's clickable to either a next page or to an expansion like a pop-up or a show hide type of a design. So The problem is that today's world is going more towards flat design. And flat design means that they're getting to be more of a monotone type of a design. So a lot of the text links, for example, look like the paragraph text. So here's an example of a traditional link versus flat design. So traditional has usually an underline. It's traditionally blue, although it can be any color, versus a flat design, you see that it blends in with the paragraph. So a clickability cue is this underline, is the color differentiation, is the spatial difference of where it's positioned on the site. With flat design, it sort of melds between. The eyes simply rolls over it. Bringing heat mapping in a little bit early, but that's okay. But because flat design has these weak clickability signifiers, it's not performing as well as, say, a traditional link. So here's an example of two heat maps side by side, the left side being that traditional link, so the blue with the underline, the right side being just the paragraph styled text. You'll notice at the bottom here I have some stats. So this left side, out of the users that tested this side, the goal for them was to find the Pearl Shop Now link. Now in doing that, 86% followed the pattern successfully by getting to that Shop Now link, which is here. You see these two red bubbles here, and they clicked on those, which is great. That was the point of the exercise. The right side, however, really struggled with this. Only 50% got to follow the pattern. And you'll notice here that their first initial click is on the header itself, and they really scroll past this Shop Now. It's not as strong as the left side. So we really want to make sure that you have those clickability cues so the user knows that they can click on something. Some other hints for you is to use that underline. So we talked about this with that Shop Now link, but using the underline signifies to any sort of link that a user can click on it. So definitely using that at the very, very minimum. If you want to keep your text the same as your paragraph text, that is at the bare minimum, use an underline. If there is a button involved, then have it be contrasted. So I know that in one of the questions was about color contrast or the color use on your site. Having color contrasted colors is going to really help out specifically with your call to actions. So you're looking at, say, a white button, and then on hover it turns to black or to a dark blue. That is a very sharp contrast that would really catch the eye to know that that is a clickable element. Placing the button near the relative content, so similar to that Shopify example, where you have the sub-content header as well as the header itself really close up. And we'll talk about this in another screen for Fitts Law, but those two close together are really going to make an impact for that call to action section in general. Place more than one link. So you see I'm going to hop back one slide. In this order that the header and the Shop Now link both are clicked from the user. So having more than one area or more than one text place in the area clickable is going to really help that click-through rate to that page overall. So my suggestion is not only just link the button or the link, but also the header and potentially a subheader, maybe even an inline text link. Give the user multiple places to go somewhere for that call-through or the click-through rate to really be strong. Use actionable text and verbs. Again, using the words learn, go, shop, those types of words to really get the user encouraged to do that action is going to help. And then finally, don't be wildly original. We don't need to put a lot of branded language into our call to actions. A call to action is a call to action. So don't make it hard for someone to decipher what they actually want to do next. Use the branded terminology in a header, not a button. Okay, so my second arm of the three arms I'll talk about today is the ease of use. So really, when you're looking at a redesign or even revamping your current page or pages, you really want to take a step back and design for the ideal audience. I can't tell you how many times a customer comes to me and says, I just don't think it's working. I'm not getting the results I need. And then I ask, do you have persona profiles? And they say no. So they don't even know who they're trying to go after, which is why they're not designing an interface to accommodate that user. So designing a profile really helps put the entire team in that person's shoes so they can better reflect and approach the design to accommodate that person's specific motivations, goals, and needs. if you don't have personas, somewhere that I would suggest to start is to create high-level category buckets of attributes that define your business unit. So for example, if you're in a financial institution or a financial industry, you'd want, say, online banking, you'd want maybe some mutual funds, you'd want the high-level categories of your business. Then the next step is then define each individual instance of that category and assign a persona to that instance. So for example, in online banking, you'd have mobile banking, you had in-person portals, all these different things that could go into that, and those can define a single persona. When you're making these personas, do not forget to write down their pain points. What are they experiencing? Why are they coming to you? What solution are they trying to solve emotionally as also just practically? And then also, what is their motivation? What is their end goal? What impact are they looking to make, which is why they're coming to you? Those two buckets within a persona, within a larger bucket, will help you define your site and really get your entire team on board to get in the mindset of designing for the user and not just for themselves. Note the navigation. So navigation, globally, 56% of users use the navigation. So navigation is a huge piece of your site. I will say there's tons and tons and tons of notes that I have on navigation, but I boiled it down to 3. One of them is to not have too many links. So George Miller was a scientist who has a theory that the number 7 is what the average human can remember. He also added the plus or minus 2 function, meaning the range of what a human can actually digest and remember correctly is between 5 and 9. So a rule of thumb is when you're designing your main menu, including your logo, including your conversion button, try to stay within that 5 to 9 range. The second is to not have too few. So opposite of that is focus on the prioritization of your navigation. So put your most important links on the left side as well as the right. The left side is close to the logo, so I would suggest having your either best-selling product or your most important product next to your logo because it is going to be the first thing as an English-speaking reader you read left to right. So it will be next to your logo. That will be one of the most important places. The second is the conversion spot, which is the top right. So in that navigation, you'll see in this example, it's this teal button here. That is the most conversion-heavy placement in your navigation of a website in general. So having items also placed on the far right do help with click-through rate. Things to consider when you are looking at your navigation is to look at how broad your categories are. So thinking through a large e-commerce box store, you look at Amazon or say Best Buy, there's millions and millions of items that are categorized in a very e-commerce mega menu type format. Whereas if you're a mom and pop SaaS shop or a law firm, you're going to look at a very specific small set of, say, practice areas or services or products that you offer. So that nav is going to be different. So keep that in mind. The second to consider is the user intent. So think about what your users are coming to your website for. So in your personas, what is their motivation? Are they familiar with your product already, such as Best Buy, and you're looking for a piece of hardware that you already know about? That is the seeking. Or are you trying to educate the user while they learn about the product, which is more of a browsing? I always get the question, should I optimize my navigation or my search first? So the question is, it depends, which is a classic UX answer, but it's true. You really need to balance the aware versus unaware action of your company's audience and the services that you provide. So what that means is if a user is aware, they know about you, they know what you have to offer, they're probably coming back to you for the second or third time, maybe looking at your website. They have high confidence, so they know that what they want and what they need. So they're probably going to go straight to search and look for exactly what they're looking for. Versus if they're unaware, they're more likely to use the navigation to browse the categories to see what sort of subcategories are underneath that, which is why it's important, per my first point, is to look at how broad or specific your categories are. Because if it's a branded product, the user might not know, if they're unaware, what that branded product actually means to them. So consider that. Some stats on the side here is 64% of users coming to an e-commerce site look to search as their first function. However, You switch that to a B2B or a SaaS company, that drops to 28%. So consider that, and most likely your users, if you're in a B2B realm, are going to be using that navigation first. So to answer that, it depends. If you are generally a SaaS or B2B company, focus on navigation first. Okay, heat mapping, woohoo! So there's 3 types of heat maps: clicking, scrolling, and hovering. So first I'll go through the scrolling. The scrolling is all about the illusion of completeness. So going back to the topic of that giant hero area, I like to call it the flexible media area, FMA. But if you look at that FMA graphic, it needs to have a big, beautiful representation of your brand visually, of course. That image, that video really is engaging. It has a visual weight in the user's eyes. So that's what's important there. However, you need to ensure that there is some sort of verbiage or call to action or some sort of engagement for a user to know that there's something else beyond the fold. I can't tell you how many times I've heat mapped a client's website, and this is the exact instance. Here's an example. So this client has a beautiful image. We started off with this big handmade pottery image. You scroll down, and immediately after the average fold, it jumps from 100% to 75%. And that is because they don't have a huge header that introduces themselves brand-wise for those unaware audiences. They also do not have a call to action or even a secondary action to really guide the user. They just count on that icon for them to go down. And then the last is another example of this would be like if you had a horizontal line on your page. So if there's paragraphs and paragraphs and use a line to segment between, at times, if there's a lot of padding, users might see that as an end line of the page, and they might not think that there's anything beyond that. It's more of like a Storytell chapter close where they don't scroll beyond that. So just be aware of that. Reading patterns. So hover maps are one of the most important aspects of heat mapping that I use and my team uses to decide and help iterate clients' websites and landing pages. Hovers really, really identify the micro interactions and the trigger feedback that comes from a site. What I mean for that is hovers on buttons, any sort of erroring that confirms the user needs to do another action or correct their action, any sort of like interactive element, as well as reading. There is a ton of reading patterns out there. There's also scrolling patterns. I talk to my clients about T pattern users, F pattern users, layered cake users. I don't come up with these names. But within those are the different types of scrolling patterns as well as reading patterns that a user prioritizes when they're looking at the page. This is segmented up usually by demographics as well as just overall need. So if you're looking at aware versus unaware, and then also in addition to that, seeking versus browsing, that combination will then get you the type of user that you can expect. So for example, a T user is usually a mobile-friendly user that's tech-savvy, is looking down the middle of the page because they're used to using one of these and going through down the middle of the page, and then they're stopping and crossing the T as they read. Fitts law. So when I'm looking at hover maps, a lot of times I use Fitts law as a guiding thumb to recommend different changes. What is Fitts law? Fitts law is basically how can people select a target or how quickly they can. So this researcher, he developed a law that basically said the more distance that you have to travel and the smaller the target, the more interaction cost it takes for a user to get there, meaning the less likely they are to get to there and actually click on it. A good example of this is on HubSpot. So you look at this mega nav that they have, everything is very close together. It's sequentially aligned, it's sequentially formatted to have the how-to be bigger and then the links be a little bit smaller. So it has hierarchy there, it brings the eye down. It's also left aligned, so you're able to have your eye follow that line and then read almost like an F pattern user, down the list of items to choose. That's one example. They're all very close together. There's not like separate columns that separates it out. A second example is this button. A lot of times clients think that they can just have a small little link that's their call to action button and they check that box. No, according to Fitts Law, you need a very large button, make it very prominent and very obvious that that's what you want the user to do next. So having large buttons with very contrasted actions is really going to help push the user towards what you want them to do. On the flip side, another example is the opposite of Fitts Law in a positive light of if you don't want a user to do something. Classic example is iPhone users. So if you hit the power off button, you'll see on the right side here, whoopsies. Oh no. There we go. You'll see that the power off button is on the top and the X is on the bottom. Power off is the intended action for the user to swipe to power off. So therefore, they do not want to close proximity place the cancel button near the top. They want to make it very obvious that it is the opposite of the action they want you to do by clicking that button. So they place it further away and make it smaller in order to do the 180 of the actual Fitts Law, which is still in line. Okay, click currency. So users want to do the least amount of work to get to things. I often call them late. Everyone's lazy. Everyone just wants to do the bare minimum to get to where they need to, versus time, versus clicks, versus everything. So what I like to do is position clicks as currency. So you yourself, would you rather pay $4 or $5 for a conversion? I bet you would say $4. So even though that $4 is single dollars, it still adds up to be less than, say, a larger interaction cost. So for example, if you had tab structures that you need to click 3 times over, but then the actual links themselves aren't descriptive, then you're creating a larger interaction cost, which is more of that $5. So you're costing $5 each click there, versus if you would just give a simple, say like in a progress wizard where you have yes, no questions. They're very easily answered, very easily clickable. So you're more than likely comfortable answering more than one time over. So consider how much thought and effort it does take to get that click, and then assign a dollar amount to that, because this will help you organize your website clicks so you can still have click to click to click actions, but it's less expensive than if you were to have a branded call to action that's a little bit more mysterious for the user to click on. Okay, so summary would be focus on your call to actions, make sure they're very clear, very concise, very contrasted, and also big, according to Fitts Law. Make sure that proximity is really close. For heat mapping, it's a great, great tool, and if you want to talk more, you can click that calendar link previously in Jay's slides to get a meeting with us. I'd love to talk to you about what your website is currently doing so we can better improve it. And then third would be definitely take a look at who your website is targeting in terms of audiences. Those persona profiles really do help set the foundation for a successful business plan. Thank you.
Awesome, Chelsey. Thank you. I often when we do these panels, I take my own notes, and people like it when I share my notes, and then they hear the summary twice. So what some of the key things that I took from that is number one, offer people an incentive to click. Use verbs and keep that close to the relevant content, using clickability clues, such as the click relevant to the content. Heat maps, really cool. So you could see where people were hovering with their mouse and where they were clicking on the page. And you use that for design clues, like the example we showed of the landing page test. People were, we had a thing that said, hey, 3 steps to get help with your whatever it was. And people were actually clicking on the 3 steps, because one of them was a little phone. It was like, call us to get help or email us to get help. And people were clicking on those things. So we saw that in the heat map, and we actually adapted the page and made those clickable. Similar with 10 Golden Rules, when we did the heat mapping, we saw that everybody was going to the navigation, going to 10 Golden Rules, and clicking to go read the 10 Golden Rules. So we created a UVP where people could just download a little PDF where they could get the 10 Golden Rules. I'm going to save this one for last. the George Miller theory. How many links? And the links should be 5 to 7. And so that was awesome because I didn't know the answer. And we get that question all the time, like how many links should be in the navigation? And it's like, 5 to 7 is kind of like we talked about this the other day, like a phone number. The human mind can remember 7 digits. And George Miller's theory on a web page is like, you can't have any more than that or people start getting a little bit frustrated. The conversion spot, I hadn't heard that term before. Top right. And as I said, for law firms, you always want to have the phone number up there in the top right because that's the number one conversion. You're going to get 24% conversion from calls to clients from a phone call as opposed to as little as 2% from a form fill. And then chat somewhere in the middle. And Fitz Law, how quickly can they get to what it is they want to do? And the geography in inches on the page, I thought that was really interesting. And Fitz Law says you should have large, prominent buttons as a target. And I thought that tied interestingly to my friend Steve Krug's book, Don't Make Me Think, with the big orange button, super clickable. By the way, I forgot to mention, I interviewed Steve Krug on episode 10 of the 10 Golden Rules podcast. So if you want to hear Steve and the classic strategy. So I said I'd save this one for last because you said personas and you talked a little bit about personas, and I saved it for last because GB asked a question about personas. So the note I took was you said create 2 to 3 target people who you're designing for. And we've actually done this exercise on a number of websites, and you're the master of personas. And so, like I'll make up a law firm example. Let's say it was, Construction Craig, and Craig was injured on he's a construction worker and he was either injured in a construction site. And so he's he's one persona we target, and he's like, 27 years old and he's a worker. And he doesn't have an iPhone. He has a regular phone. And then we designed for that because we'd know like this guy doesn't have a smartphone. He doesn't have home internet. And so that's like a persona we would create. So the question was, I struggle with audience personas as we are a full service law firm with so many different target audiences. Should web design be different for each practice area page with some kind of common branding theme?
Yes. So your Construction Craig example, Jay. So think about it as like your category. So yes, you have different practice areas. So what my recommendation would be is to list out the motivation and pain from that practice area. What's their timeline like? What are they actually struggling with? Is there anybody else involved in their decision making? Write it down and then almost do a pro-con list and see where the overlap is. You'd probably find that there is a lot of overlap in a lot of the practice areas that you can then lump together to create a persona that addresses all of that. What you're trying to do is cover your bases so in any given audience that you consider ideal can navigate throughout your site smoothly and more if they feel personalized. So no, I don't think it's required that you have one for every single practice area. Yes, I do think you need to do the exercise to look at where the overlap is so you can come up with a core, say, 4 to 6 targeted personas. Keep in mind there's also an edge case persona. So if they are like on the lip of being like a persona, but not quite, consider them an edge case and have them be a secondary layer of your testing and not the primary.
Another way I'd answer that question is like the 80-20 rule. And we find in business that, 80% of your revenue comes from 20% of your customers, and 80% of all wealth in Italy was held in the hands of 20% of the families when Pareto identified the Pareto principle, like the 80-20 rule. So if you think about it, like, what are your best cases or what are your best customers? And if 80% of your revenue comes from 2 or 3 practice areas, you probably want to focus on designing at least the homepage and the overall major navigability. I'm going to try that word. You want to pick 2 or 3 personas for the major design points. And then, like Chelsey said, maybe have a couple edge cases. Here's a quick question. I'll let you answer it. I have an answer too. Should you use personal or stock photography on your homepage?
On your homepage. This is like Jay and I just talked about this the other day. The answer is it depends. I know that's such a vague answer, but it really depends. So in terms of what your brand is looking for, if you sell, say, something like, a product like lipstick, for example, like something like that, you could use a common stock photography to get the gist of your product out there. The important thing is the empathy that the photo has to your brand promise. So looking at your mission statement, what do you want to portray to your users? Make sure that that photo is the essence of that. So if you can't find stock photography that matches that brand tone, then I would suggest custom photography. However, with Jay and I's conversation, if you're a service-based company and you're looking at one-to-one relationships, like you yourself are going to provide that person their service and have a lot of face time, then I would suggest having your own photography, because then you, again, get that emotive facial recognition, human to human, that instantly creates a bond.
Awesome. Well, great job, Chelsey, as always. And please stick around and we'll see if there's any additional questions. And I'm just going to introduce Nicholas, and then I'll give you the slides, Nicholas, and you can share. So as I mentioned, Nicholas worked at 10 Golden Rules. We were so lucky to have him early in his career, and he left to go work really for a church. And they had a worldwide mission of helping people and feeding people around the world. And that's why his company is called Earnworthy, because he's all about doing the right thing. And Nicholas is one of the nicest people you'd ever meet. He's just, really grounded and really legit. And the second part of his business is called GrowthMarketer. And that's where he teaches you a whole bunch of stuff for free. So I'd love to say that he learned a little bit from 10 Golden Rules about that. But he's the host of a top-rated podcast called The Growth Marketing Toolbox. He has tons of assets and stuff on his website. And the reason he's here today is he's probably one of the number one landing page designers in the world, as recognized by our partner, Unbounce. We've been using Unbounce to build landing pages for, probably close to 10 years. And Nicholas is the master, or one of the world's leading masters in Unbounce and landing page design. So without further ado, sir, I will stop sharing and let you share your slides.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jay. I really appreciate it. Great presentation so far. I've been taking some really great notes. And let me share my screen and then we'll jump right in. Let's see. Here we go. Okay. So hopefully everyone can see my
looks
slides.
Good.
Perfect. Okay. So I'm going to be covering some landing page secrets for lawyers and professional service firms. And it's going to piggyback a lot off of what was already covered with the themes of simplicity and really basing everything we do on testing. So I think that's the overall theme here. And hopefully this will be very, very helpful. The four things that I want you to walk away with is, first, something I call the path of least resistance. It's going to make more sense once we get into that. The second is how to create a CTA triple threat. So maybe before this presentation, you never knew what the phrase CTA meant, or maybe you've heard call to action, but you didn't really know exactly what it was. Chelsey did an amazing job explaining what a CTA is. I'm going to go into a little more detail there and show how to create what I would call a CTA triple threat. And then I'm going to share what I consider your secret weapon when it comes to getting more leads and sales through your website or on your landing pages. So you'll find out what your secret weapon is. And then as an added bonus at the end, I'm going to share just a quick preview of something called the 7-question landing page framework, which we came up with. And I'll show you how you can get an absolutely free copy of that framework, so you can even learn more about landing pages and how to create landing pages that really convert. So why don't we jump right in? Jay already did the introduction, so I don't need to go into that, other than to say, I have over 11 years of marketing experience, and for the last 6 years, I've really focused on landing page optimization. And in that time period, I've helped design or test or optimize thousands of landing pages for agencies, for law firms, for SaaS companies, you name it. And so, as Jay mentioned, I have a consultancy called Earnworthy, and then I have a more of a content brand called GrowthMarketer, where you can learn about a lot of what I'm going to be covering today. So with that, let's jump right into the very first thing that I want to cover, and that's called the path of least resistance. And I want to try just a very quick experiment with everyone. It'll only take a few seconds. So use your imagination and think of a website. It can be any website at all. Maybe it's even your website. Maybe it's Google. It could be any website. So I want you to picture it in your mind. Can you see it? Okay. So maybe if I had to take a bet, I'd say that the majority of you pictured a website in this context where it's a desktop experience, meaning that what you pictured in your mind was maybe the Google homepage as it looks if you were on your laptop or desktop computer, or maybe it was your own website, but it was in that context of that full screen experience where there's a lot of assets on the page, there's a lot of space, there's a lot of just different things, but it's in that context of the way you would see a website on a laptop device or on a desktop computer. I've done this little thought experiment with a lot of folks, and usually that's the case. When people think about a website these days, even in 2021, they're still thinking primarily of that desktop or laptop experience. And what I want to challenge you to do is to change that thinking, because the stats are staggering when you actually look at the amount of traffic that goes to a typical desktop or laptop experience versus mobile, and then tablet, which is way down here, this little purple line here, that's tablet traffic. We can sort of ignore that for now because it's so low. I really want you to look at these top two lines here on this chart. So the green line is mobile traffic or mobile market share on average in the US, not for any particular industry. And then the blue line is desktop traffic. And so you'll see that it's very, very close. It's around 48% split. And I know Jay had mentioned this earlier. So the takeaway here is that if you're just focusing on your desktop or laptop experience when you're building your site or trying to optimize it, you're leaving out 48% of that market who are potentially going to visit your site. However, if you're running any type of paid advertising, let's say you're running Facebook ads or you're running Google ads, it's even more important to focus on the mobile experience, because while it's true that there's only 48% of internet traffic is mobile, so you might look at that and say, well, I still need to take care of the other 50 or so percent who are visiting through desktop, so I'm okay. I can sort of focus on both. That changes when you start advertising, because if you're advertising on Google, for instance, 72% of Google search traffic, that is the ad click, so people who are searching on Google who end up clicking on an ad, 72% of it is going to be a mobile visit. So now if you're advertising on Google, if you're spending money, and I know a lot of the law firms we work with are spending a lot of money on Google, obviously, you really need to hone in on that mobile experience, because that's 72% of your paid traffic from Google. And on Facebook, it's very, very similar. 93% of Facebook's ad revenue comes from that mobile experience. So this is where the stats can be a little misleading. If you're only looking at that first stat that shows a pretty even split between market share or device share between mobile and desktop, that's going to change quite a bit when you actually break it down and look at paid traffic. So the takeaway here is, if you're doing any type of paid advertising, it is very important to focus on mobile. Now, I called this the path of least resistance because from a consumer perspective, just like what Chelsey was talking about a lot of users being lazy, that's absolutely true. People want to have a very easy experience, and so that's why they're on their mobile device. It's the most convenient device for them. However, the challenge as optimizers and as marketers and as business owners is that mobile traffic doesn't convert as well as desktop traffic. It's more difficult to get that conversion, talking in broad terms here. In fact, according to one article, the conversion rate of mobile traffic is half what it is on desktop. So they did a study and they found that on average, desktop traffic, so people visiting on a desktop or laptop, were likely to convert at 4.81% versus if they were on a mobile device, it was only 2.25%. So this is sort of the paradox that I'm talking about, because you need to focus on mobile, but this is where it's more difficult to get people to take action. And that's what we want people to do. So it's a challenge of going where the people are, going where the traffic is, which is mobile, but also doing it in a way where you understand what you're up against. And if you're trying to get people to take action on a mobile device, it's going to be more difficult. And you have to put extra effort into making that happen. So that's the first takeaway of the 4 takeaways that I want to share with you real quick. It's to stop focusing on desktop and laptop behavior and focus more on mobile. I'm not saying disregard desktop and laptop, absolutely not. You should still keep that present, but just sort of shift the way you think about web design, websites, and the way people consume content on the internet, and really try to focus in on mobile. Okay, the second thing that I want to share is called the CTA triple threat. So you already know what a CTA is. It's a call to action. It's a phrase that is used to tell the visitor exactly what action to take and how to take it. And I love that Chelsey pointed out that it's more than just the button. I see this happen all the time where people think the CTA is just whatever it says on their button, but that's not the case. It's the action you want people to take. And there's different ways of representing that action on your website or on your landing page. And what we've found at Earnworthy when we were working with law firm clients specifically is that if you create what we call a CTA triple threat, where you have 3 different calls to action that are all related, it actually helps increase conversions quite significantly. So what is the triple threat specifically? It's when you have a phone call to action, so a click to call button. You also would have a form on that page, and you would also have a live chat option. So it's a phone call, a form, and a live chat. And so your first reaction might be, oh, that's overwhelmed. It's too much. It's going to confuse the visitor. And this is where you need to be very careful, because I'm not saying you should have 3 different calls to action that are all offering different things. Like the form is asking you to download an ebook, and the phone call is asking if you just want to contact the firm, and the chat is asking if you want to get a free consultation. All of these calls to action should have the same messaging, where maybe for a law firm, it's to get a free consultation, or to see if you qualify, or to see if you qualify for a specific case or some type of mass tort. So the messaging should be the same across the board. You don't want to confuse people. You don't want to tell people they can go get an ebook over here if they fill out the form, or they can call and just have their general questions answered. Keep it consistent with your messaging, but the idea is give people different channels through which they can contact you. Because as Jay said, certain people prefer different channels. So we found that live chat especially is great for sort of that spur of the moment visit, where maybe you're a personal injury firm and someone just looked you up on Google because they need a personal injury attorney, and they're just, in the moment, they need to get an attorney right away. They don't want to fill out a form, and maybe they're a younger user and they don't want to get on the phone, but they may be more likely to engage with a live chat. So that's why it's really important to have a phone call to action, a form call to action, and a live chat call to action all on the same page. When it comes to the tools that I would recommend you use for this, when it comes to phone, there's a really cool tool out there called CallRail, and it's a great tool for tracking these phone calls. And so if you want to be able to get that conversion rate figured out for what your page is converting at, you want to be able to track all the calls that come through and track it back to your search results, track it to a specific page. And so CallRail can help you do that. And then for live chat, there's a whole bunch of different live chat tools out there specific to the law firm market. One that I really like that a lot of our clients use with great success is called Apex Chat. I'm not affiliated with them, but it's just a tool that's worked really well. And they'll even manage the live chat for you, and you just pay on a per lead basis. So it sort of takes the pressure off of the firm if you don't have that in-house capability to be responsive right away. So that is the call to action triple threat. I hope that's helpful. And the third thing I want to share is, what is the secret weapon that I've been talking about? Well, I'll give you a hint. It's a robot. And in 2021, we would expect robots to be involved in our marketing, right? So we've found that if you swap out a standard form, like the form that you just saw on the previous page, for a conversational chatbot, In some cases, we've been able to increase conversions, which are form fills or form submissions, by as much as 122%. So we would take, on average, a page that was converting maybe around 3.2%, and that would push it all the way up to over 13%. And the only change we made on that page was to remove the form and put in its place an embedded chatbot. And what this does is it creates a conversational experience, because at the end of the day, forms are boring. And forms are like one of the most archaic things that internet marketers still have to work with, unfortunately. And they need to evolve. And thankfully, they are evolving now. So on the left here, you can see like the standard, very boring form that just looks like a lot of work. And on the right, you see what is a much more conversational experience. This is a embedded chatbot. This one is actually built with a tool called Landbot, which I'll show you in just a moment a little bit more about that. But you see how it's a more conversational experience. It has an avatar with a real person, and it's a robot. There's nobody behind that chatbot. There could be if you wanted to integrate it with a live chat experience, but for the most part, this is a very much automated experience that creates this conversational feel. So that bot that you just saw is built with a tool called Landbot, and this is my favorite chatbot builder. I know there's a whole bunch of different ones out there, but the one that I think is the easiest to use and it's the easiest to get integrated with your website or with your landing page is Landbot. You can check it out and even give it a try if you want to give it a test run using that link on the page, or just search for Landbot. It's a very, very intuitive and easy to use product. And what's really cool about Landbot is you can integrate it with your website or your landing page in different ways. You could have a full page experience where people are going directly to the Landbot. You could have it pop up, sort of like a pop-up that Chelsey was showing on some of the slides, and then the chatbot lives inside the pop-up. You could embed it onto the page, and I would say by far that's the one that we've seen the most success with for our clients, where it just replaces the form and it's right there on the page. Or you can have a live chat experience where it's like a little widget down at the corner, and when people click on it, it opens up just like a regular live chat it would, but in this case, it's the chatbot that you're engaging with rather than an actual person. This is just a quick peek of what it looks like behind the scenes of the actual builder. And so you can see it's very easy to use. You can connect different actions together. And what's really cool for the use case of the legal marketing space is I know how important it is to be able to pre-qualify a potential case and to be able to ask specific questions. You know, were you injured in an auto accident, or were you injured in an accident? Yes or no? If someone says yes, what type of accident was it? Was it a motorcycle accident? Was it a bus accident? Was it a car accident? So you can do all of this type of logic-based routing in the actual builder. You can even get so advanced that you could, if you wanted to, pre-qualify or even disqualify, which is a sort of a murky area in the legal space. I know you don't want to be relying on a bot to do any disqualifications per se, but you have that ability where you could fire different Facebook pixels depending on how someone responds. You can, if you're dealing with like a specific mass tort, you can use the different criteria to ask specific questions and then redirect people to different pages based on how they respond. You can have leads be sent to different team members if it's a qualified lead versus an unqualified lead. So there's just a lot of opportunity, not only for the visitor who's going to engage with this chatbot in a much more conversational setting, but there's a lot more opportunity for the marketer to be able to work with that data, and it helps with that intake process. Okay. The final thing I want to share is the bonus. This is the 7-question landing page framework. So over the past few years, people have always been asking, what should be on my landing page? What are the specific elements that I need on the page? And if you were to Google a question like, what should be on a landing page? And you go over to Google Images, you're going to see these types of images where it's a whole bunch of images that show different parts of a landing page. You should have a headline. You should have a call to action. You should have a form. You should have a testimonial, all these different little elements. And that's sort of the trend of how people learn about landing pages, as a collection of these little Lego blocks of different things that should go on the landing page. And what I want to do is challenge you to think about landing pages in a completely different light. So instead of thinking about them as elements, I want you to focus on the questions that your landing page needs to answer for your visitor. So for instance, let me give you an example. When someone visits a landing page, one of the first things that they want to know is, do I understand what this page is about? What is the big idea? Do I have a sense of clarity for what you're offering, right? So that's that first question there. Do I quickly understand the big idea? This is a sort of a subconscious question that your visitor is going to ask themselves in just a matter of a few minutes, but it's really important for you to answer that question on the page. Some other questions that your visitor will likely have is, can this, and when I say this, I'm talking about your product or your service. So in this case, can this law firm help me specifically? Or do I like the overall design? Do I like the look and feel of what's going on here? Has this firm helped others? That's a very important question that gets into something called social proof. Do I trust it? That's all about trust and credibility. Is there something unique about this firm versus all the other options that are out there? And last but not least, can I easily take action now? And that's where we're talking about the call to action. What is the page asking the person to do? So let's go real quickly and look into one of these. And then we're going to wrap up and take some questions. But for the example, just to dive in a little bit deeper to this framework, I want to focus on, has it helped others? I call this the influence question because it's really about social influence and understanding that it's much better if you can prove or show that your service has worked successfully for others first. That's going to put people at ease, and it's going to make it more likely that they want to take action. And so to give you I guess this would be a pre-COVID example. You know, if you looked at these two images of the same restaurant, which restaurant would you rather eat at? Pre-COVID, of course. You'd want to go to the one that is occupied by other people, right? It has social proof built into it because you see that it's a successful restaurant and nobody wants to be the first one in that restaurant because you never know, maybe they're not moving the food or whatnot. So that's just a real life example of social proof. And so you want to add that same type of social proof to your landing page. And a good example of how to do this is with testimonials. So you may have heard of a software product called Basecamp. It's a project management tool. They have an entire website page that's dedicated to social proof. They have hundreds and hundreds of testimonials. And I'm not saying you need to go crazy and do that, but having just a few testimonials on your page is a great way to add social proof. And that's going to help people answer that question of, has this service or has this firm helped others? And that's going to make it easier for them to take action. So there's so much more we can get into with the 7-question landing page framework. I put it all together in an ebook. If you want to check it out, I'll put the link in the chat, or you can just go to growthmarketer.co/framework and you can download it absolutely free and you can check it out. It's a lot of detail. It's sort of the framework that we've been building landing pages around for a couple of years now. And so that's going to do it for this one. And I will turn it back over to Jay and we'll be able to take some questions.
Awesome, Nicholas. That was really great, and I'm so I don't know if I have a right to be proud of you, but I knew you when, and you're really a great presenter now, and really clear, great stuff. So here's my quick notes, and hopefully folks like this. The first one that I took was, you said that a lot of websites today, and this echoed something I said, a lot of websites today have 50% of their traffic coming from mobile, either cell phones or tablets. And it's normally like, 46%
right.
Cell phones and 4% tablets. But something interesting that you taught me to always be cognizant of, when it's paid traffic, when it's paid Google traffic, it's 72% mobile. And when it's paid Facebook traffic, it can be as high as 93% mobile. Mm-hmm. So when you're designing landing pages, you definitely want to be cognizant of the percentage of mobile traffic, because landing pages typically are coming from that paid traffic. Second thing you talked about was consistent messaging on calls to action. And that just was like good common sense advice. You pointed out CallRail. So we love CallRail. And every single one of our clients, I think, has call tracking, meaning we know how many calls they got, from which keywords, from which campaigns, which calls came from SEO, and then we're able to tie that to the performance when clients actually sign as signed clients. And Apex Chat, we love Apex Chat. And then something I'm going to check out. You and I talked about this. You introduced me to Landbot, and we're looking at this. This will be the third AI robot bot that we looked at. But it was interesting when you shared with me that Landbot can replace the form. So I'll look at it a little differently. Thank you for that. And the 7 questions they need to answer on the landing page. So I loved your the big idea is what you called it. I called it the 3-second rule, that when people come to a web page, you said they need to understand the big idea. I said they need to understand who you are, what you offer, and the really important thing, can you answer their query? I mean, query is really a question, and essentially that's what we do. When we do a search, we're really asking a question, right? Like, who's the best lawyer for me? Or, where's the best place to go for a steak when I'm traveling? And hopefully that's coming soon. And then you talked about some of the other factors in those questions, the 7 questions you want to answer on a landing page, such as testimonials and trust. Really, really good stuff. Now, I want to turn one of them into a question, which is, if you're going to replace the form on your landing page, and Chelsey and I just talked about this for our next test. So we're going to take your idea and we're going to make it our next test. So I showed you we had A, B, C, D, and E. So variant F, we're going to replace the form with a Landbot chatbot. Question is that easy to do? Is that cut and paste? Or do you really need to build that, as you said, with the logic-based routing?
Yeah, that's a great question. What I've seen work best is to not have the first question or questions be contact questions like name or phone number or email address. People don't want to engage with a form if that's the first thing they're going to see. So you want to lead with some questions that are specific to the case type in the context of legal marketing. Going back to a personal injury example, have you been injured in an accident? And then maybe it's multiple choice. What type of accident? So I would say that the logic-based routing is very important, but at the same time, you don't want to have 10 questions that someone needs to answer. A lot of times the purpose of those initial questions is not so much to gather all the data for the firm, but just to make people more comfortable with beginning that form fill process on the bot. So I would keep it to just 3 or 4 questions tops. And then at the end, that's when you can start getting into the contact questions. So it would require a little bit of logic-based routing. But again, since it's all visual, it's very easy to set up. I had no background in chatbot development prior to this. You don't need to be a coder or a developer. I say the average person can pick it up within a few minutes. Yeah.
All right. Well, if anyone has any questions specific to Nicholas, please ask them in the Q&A or the chat. So the first one, does the bot have a memory state to hold long conversations and understand the context in order to learn and evolve its content daily? So I guess, is it artificial intelligence? Is it getting smarter?
That's a great question. At this point, the most common use case is no, it does not have that type of AI. So it all has to be added on the back end in terms of the different options that you give, because you're mostly getting people to click on different buttons and choose from a drop down that you've selected. And if they choose this option, send them to this question. But it is moving into that point where I would say within the next couple of years, there will be some natural AI built into these types of bots.
Chelsey, I see you're still with us, and you can certainly hop back on the screen if you're able, because the next question is probably for you. Oh, wait, we already answered that one. I'm sorry. I know I missed one along the way. Well, I guess this one's for all of us. I'm overwhelmed by coding and need to revamp my site. This is from Cheryl. Not my area of expertise. I find myself delaying, trying to figure out how to move my site forward. So I guess, what's the headline answer on that? It's really a new website design question, right, Chelsey?
I mean, my recommendation is to have someone audit it. Part of a service that Snap offers and TGR as well is we audit sites to really we weigh, is there a low-hanging fruit list that we can tackle? Is there a few adjustments you can make on page to at least get you to a better conversion rate? Or is it looking at, is the CMS completely backwards on the back end? Is the front end just messed up for users? Is it not really doing much for your audience? Then maybe a redesign. So the audit sort of fleshes that all out and breaks it down. That's what I would recommend.
That's a great point. And as a matter of fact, Chelsey suggested this for one of our clients. And the landing page, the ABCDE landing page test that I shared earlier, initially started out as an audit and a heat mapping exercise where we looked at the website and we said, hey, let's start with the paid landing pages where we're getting a ton of traffic and spending, $20,000 or $25,000 a month. Let's see how much we can improve the performance of those pages and what can we learn. And then if we can make a significant improvement, that'll justify the expenditure for the new website. So now we're in the middle of building the new website with the intelligence that we garnered from those tests. Next question, is the chat, there's a chat in the question from the beginning that I missed.
It was the color question, Jay, that we were going to punt till later.
Oh yeah, what color schemes would you suggest are great website colors today that are appealing to the eyes, as I've heard customers complain about color schemes not being appealing?
Well, I love that question because I have a background in color theory, so that makes sense to me. I would focus on your brand color and expanding that out. So obviously if you have like a grayscale, like 10 Golden Rules right now is white. If that is your primary color, then obviously you're going to have to introduce a secondary color. Going back to the call to action, you want to make sure it's contrasted. So oftentimes my clients take on a complementary, meaning like if it's blue, then you have an orange button. By the way, orange, the Don't Make Me Think cover that Jay pointed out earlier, that big orange button, orange is the best converting color right currently since 2018, still to this day is the best converting color for a button. But if there is a hue that you can go off of from your primary logo, I would recommend taking a 2 or potentially a triad. There you go. You want to click on that, it's orange, right? But I would recommend going for at least 2 colors, if not a third, that are complementary with each other and contrasted so you're able to set it up for success.
Nicholas, I'll throw one to you. If we were going to do a new landing page test for like a law firm or professional services, what would you say are a couple of the key factors that are going to win, that are going to have an improvement on the landing page design?
Yeah. So in other words, like what should you test? And this is also something we've sort of wrestled with a lot. And we created a framework called FOAM, F-O-A-M, which stands for the first thing you should test is the offer. Well, the framework actually stands for the framework, the offer, the audience, and the messaging. And so it's not in a particular order, but the number one thing that we have tested that makes the biggest difference or gives the largest lift is the offer. So if you change from, if your page says contact us, right? It's a very plain offer. If you change that to get a free consultation, you've just upped the value of that perceptive value of what someone's going to get. So that's a change in the offer. When I say framework, that would be maybe just switching the framework of the form from a regular form to a chatbot. That would be a framework test. The audience is really an off-page test, meaning that the same page can convert completely different if you're sending different traffic to it. So if you take Facebook traffic and Google traffic, send it to the same page, it's usually going to convert vastly different. So that would be an audience test. And then the messaging, that's the final thing in that FOAM framework, where messaging is just, it can be the way that you word certain things, what you focus on. Are you primarily focused on benefits versus features? And also the visual messaging, like what does the page look like visually? Because that also conveys a sense of the overall messaging. So those would be the 4 things I would test, and I would start with an offer.
I love that. Well, Chelsey, I'll give you a similar kind of question and maybe make this the last one. What are 2 or 3 simple things people should look at if they're looking at a website revamp? Like when you're doing an audit, what are 2 or 3 things that come up most frequently?
Oh, that's a loaded question. Just because we look at 9 different principles, but I guess the top 3 would be layout of text. So time and time over, you look at like early 2000s and you get those child pages, the service pages, product pages that are all just a big block of text. Now on the CMS side, that's what we like to call a WYSIWYG, which stands for what you see is what you get, which you can just type away and it's just this big block, which is easy on the admin side, but it's really not great for the user. The user on average sees 1 out of every 3 lines, and within each of those lines, they see 7 out of every 12 words. So if you think about that, if you have a giant block of text, they're only reading 1/12 of that and really digesting it. So you need to make it really separate, chunk it out into sections, make it really easily transitional so they have time to digest what they're actually reading. That would be the first one. The second one, I guess, would be forms. So you do not want to have 18,000 fields on your form. You want to keep it very concise. I know a sales team they want 12, 13 different attributes. Tell them, what is your MVP? You say you get 3 to 5, and then have them define those, what's most important to them. So, because you don't want to fatigue the user with writing a novel in a form.
That's
Those
great.
would be 2. There's a million other ones, but I'll stop there.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, we used a standard form for these webinar registrations, and we were asking for zip code. We're never going to use the zip code. So we just streamlined it.
Well, in that scenario, then it's a great idea to make things optional. So at least the user knows if you want to further define the sale, if they really want to give you that information, they can, but it's not required.
Great. Well, this was awesome. Thank you so much. I learned a lot, and I think I've been doing this for a long time, but when I get superstars like you two, it was really great. So thank you for the time. And, if you're watching this in 2023 or 2024, give me a shout out on 10 Golden Rules. Let me know that we time traveled forward. And great. Thank you all for your time and attention today. Thanks again, Nicholas and Chelsey.
Thank you for having us.
Care. Thank you.